was I and logical. Keen, calculating, perspicacious, acute, and astute. I was all of these. My brain was as powerful as a dynamo, as precise as a chemist's scales, as penetrating as a scalpel. And, think of it, I was only 18. It is not often that one so young has such a giant intellect. Take, for example, P. Bellows, my roommate at the university. Same age, same background, but dumb as an ox. A nice enough fellow, you understand, but nothing upstairs. Emotional type, unstable, impressionable. Worst of all, a faddist. Fads, I submit, are the very negation of reason. To be swept up in every new craze that comes along, to surrender yourself to idiocy, just because everybody else is doing it. This, to me, is the acme of mindlessness. Not, however, to Petey. One afternoon, I found Petey lying on his bed, with an expression of such acute distress on his face that I immediately diagnosed appendicitis. Don't move. Don't take a laxative. I'll call a doctor.
Raccoon!
Raccoon?
I want a raccoon coat.
I perceived that his trouble was not physical, but mental. Why do you want a raccoon coat?
I should have known it. I should have known they'd come back when Charleston came back. Like a fool, I spent all my money on textbooks, and now I can't buy a raccoon coat.
Can you mean that people are actually wearing raccoon coats again?
All the big men on campus are wearing them. Where have you been?
In the library. A place not frequented by big men on campus.
I've got to have a raccoon coat. I've got to.
Petey, why? Look at it rationally. Raccoon coats are unsanitary. They shed. They smell bad. They weigh too much. They're unsanitary.
You don't understand. It's a thing to do. Don't you want to be in the swim?
No.
Well, I do. I'd give anything for a raccoon coat. Anything.
My brain, that precision instrument, slipped into high gear. Anything?
Anything.
I stroked my chin thoughtfully. It so happened that I knew where to get my hands on a raccoon coat. My father had had one in his undergraduate days. It lay in a trunk in the attic back home. It also happened that Petey had something I wanted. Well, he didn't have it exactly, but at least he had first rights on it. I referred to his girl, Polly Espy. I had long coveted Polly Espy. Let me emphasize that my desire for this young woman was not emotional in nature. She was, to be sure, a girl who excited the emotions, but I was not one to let my heart rule my head. I wanted Polly for a shrewdly calculated, entirely cerebral reason. I was a freshman in law school. In a few years, I would be out in practice. I was well aware of the importance of the right kind of wife in furthering a lawyer's career. The successful lawyers I had observed were, almost without exception, married to beautiful, gracious, intelligent women. With one omission, Polly fitted these specifications perfectly. Beautiful she was. She was not yet of pin-up proportions, but I felt sure that time would supply the lack. She already had the makings. Gracious she was. By gracious I mean full of graces. She had an erectness of carriage, an ease of bearing, a poise that clearly indicated good breeding. At table her manners were exquisite. Intelligent she was not. In fact, she veered in the opposite direction. But I believed that, under my guidance, she would smarten up. At any rate, it was worth a try. It is, after all, easier to make a beautiful dumb girl smart than to make an ugly smart girl beautiful. Petey, are you in love with Polly Espy?
I think she's a keen kid, but I don't know if you call it love. Why?
Do you have any kind of formal arrangement with her? I mean, are you going steady or anything like that?
We see each other quite a bit, but we both have other dates. Why?
Is there any other man for whom she had a particular fondness?
Not that I know of. Why?
Sir, if you are out of the picture, the field would be open. Is that right?
I guess so. What are you getting at?
Nothing.
Where are you going?
Home for the weekend.
Listen, while you're home, could you get some money from your old man and lend it to me so I could buy a raccoon coat?
I may do better than that. When I got back Monday morning, I brought the huge, hairy, gaming object that my father had worn in his Stutz Bearcat in 1920. Look!
Holy Toledo! Holy Toledo! Holy Toledo! Holy Toledo!
Would you like it?
Oh, yes! What do you want for it?
Your girl.
Polly? You want Polly?
That's right.
Never.
to swim, I guess that's your business.
It isn't as though I was in love with Polly, or going steady or anything like that.
That's right.
I mean, what's Polly to me, or me to Polly?
Not a thing.
It's just been a couple of laughs, a casual kick, that's all.
Try on the coat.
It's fine.
Is it a deal?
It's a deal.
I had my first date with Polly the following evening. This was in the nature of a survey. I wanted to find out just how much work I had to do to get her mind up to the standard I required. I took her first to dinner.
Gee, that was a delish dinner.
Then I took her to a movie.
Gee, that was a Marvy movie.
Then I took her home.
Gee, I had a sensation time.
I went back to my room with heavy heart. I'd gravely underestimated the size of my task. This girl's lack of information was terrifying. Nor would it be enough merely to supply her with information. First, she had to be taught to think. This loomed as a project of no small dimensions, and at first I was tempted to give her back to Petey. But then I got to thinking about her abundant physical charms, and about the way she entered a room, and the way she handled a knife and fork, and I decided to make an effort. I went about it, as in all things, systematically. I gave her a course in logic. It happened that I, as a law student, was taking a course in logic myself, so I had all the facts at my fingertips. Oh, there we're going to talk to Noel.
Ooh, terrific.
One thing I will say for this girl, you would go far to find another so agreeable.
What are we going to talk about?
Logic.
Magnif.
Logic is the science of thinking. Before we think correctly, we must first learn to recognize the common fallacies of logic. These we will take up tonight.
Wow, Dow.
First, let us examine a fallacy called dicto simpliciter.
By all means.
Dicto simpliciter means an argument based on an unqualified generalization. For example, exercise is good. Therefore, everybody should exercise.
I agree. I mean, exercise is wonderful. I mean, it builds the body and everything.
Polly, the argument is a fallacy. Exercise is good is an unqualified generalization. For instance, if you have heart disease, exercise is bad, not good. Many people are ordered by their doctors not to exercise. You must qualify the generalization. You must say that exercise is usually good, or exercise is good for most people. Otherwise, you have committed a dicto simpliciter. Do you see?
No, but this is Marvy stuff. Do more, do more.
It would be better if you stopped tugging at my sleeve. Next, we take up a fallacy called hasty generalization. Listen to this. I can't speak French. You can't speak French. Petey Bellows can't speak French. I must therefore conclude that nobody at the University of Minnesota can speak French.
Really? Nobody?
Polly, it's a fallacy. The generalization is reached too hastily. There are too few instances to support such a conclusion.
Know any more fallacies? This is more fun than dancing, even.
I fought off a wave of despair. I was getting nowhere with this girl. Absolutely nowhere. Still, I am nothing if not persistent. Next comes post hoc. Listen to this. Let's not take Bill on our picnic. Every time we take him out with us, it rains.
I know somebody just like that. A girl back home. Eula Becker is her name. It never fails. Every single time we take her on a picnic.
Polly, it's a fallacy. Eula Becker doesn't cause the rain. She has no connection with the rain. You are guilty of post hoc if you blame Eula Becker.
I'll never do it again. Are you mad at me?
No, No, Polly, I'm not mad.
Then tell me some more fallacies.
Alright, let's try contradictory premises.
Sounds yummy.
Here's an example of contradictory premises. If God can do anything, can he make a stone so heavy that he won't be able to lift it?
Of course.
But if he can do anything, he can lift the stone.
Yeah, well then I guess he can't make the stone.
But he can do anything.
I'm all confused.
Of course you are. Because when the premises of an argument contradict each other, there can be no argument. If there is an irresistible force, there can be no immovable object. If there is an immovable object, there can be no irresistible force. Get it?
Know any more fallacies?
I think we'd better call it a night. I'll take you home now, and you go over everything you've learned. We'll have another session tomorrow night.
I had a perfectly terrific time.
I went glumly home to my room. Petey lay snoring in his bed, the raccoon coat huddled like a great hairy beast at his feet. For a moment I considered waking him and telling him that he could have his girl back. It seemed clear that my project was doomed to failure. Girl simply had a logic-proof head. But then I reconsidered. I had wasted one evening. I might as well waste another. Maybe somewhere, in the extinct crater of her mind, a few embers still smoldered. Maybe somehow I could fan them into flame. Admittedly, it was not a prospect fraught with hope, but I decided to give it one more try. Our first fallacy tonight is called ad misericordiam.
Ooh.
Here's an example. A man applies for a job. When the boss asks him what his qualifications are, he replies that he has a wife and 6 children at home. The wife is a helpless cripple. The children have nothing to eat, no clothes to wear, no shoes on their feet. There are no beds in the house, no coal in the cellar, and winter is coming.
This is awful. Awful.
Yes, it's awful, but it's no argument. The man never answered the boss's questions about his qualifications. Instead, he appealed to the boss's sympathy. He committed the fallacy of ad misericordiam. Do you understand?
You got a handkerchief?
I handed her a handkerchief and tried to keep from screaming while she wiped her eyes. Next, we will discuss false analogy. Here's an example. Students should be allowed to look at their textbooks during examinations. After all, doctors have x-rays to guide them during an operation, lawyers have briefs to guide them during a trial, and carpenters have blueprints to guide them when they are building a house. Why then shouldn't students be allowed to look at their textbooks during examinations?
There now is the most marvelous idea I've heard in years.
Polly, the argument is all wrong. Doctors, lawyers, and carpenters aren't taking a test to see how much they have learned, but students are. The situations are altogether different, and you can't make an analogy between them.
I still think it's a good idea.
Nuts. Doggedly I pressed on. Next we'll try hypothesis contrary to fact.
Let's.
Here's an example. If Madame Curie had not happened to leave a photographic plate in a drawer with a chunk of pitch blende, the world today would not know about radium.
True, true. Did you see the movie? Oh, it just knocked me out. That Walter Pigeon is so dreamy. I mean, he fractures me.
If you can forget Mr. Pigeon for a moment, I'd like to point out that the statement is a fallacy. Maybe Madame Curie would have discovered radium at some later date. Maybe somebody else would have discovered it. Maybe any number of things would have happened. You can't start with a hypothesis that's not true and then draw any supportable conclusions from it.
They ought to put Walter Pigeon in more pictures. I hardly ever see him anymore.
One more chance, I decided, but just one more. There's a limit to what flesh and blood can bear. Next, we'll discuss a fallacy called poisoning the well.
How cute.
2 men are having a debate. The first man gets up and says, "My opponent is a notorious liar. You can't believe a word he's going to say." Now, Polly, think. Think hard. What's wrong? I watched her closely as she knit her creamy brow in concentration. Suddenly, a glimmer of intelligence, the first I had seen, came into her eyes.
It's not fair. It's not a bit fair. What chance had the second man got if the first man calls him a liar before he even begins talking?
Right. 100% right. It's not fair. The first man has poisoned the well before anybody could drink from it. He has hamstrung his opponent before he could even start. Polly, I'm proud of you.
Pshaw.
You see, my dear, these things aren't so hard. All you have to do is concentrate, think, examine, evaluate. Come now, let's review everything we've learned so far.
Fire away.
Heartened by the knowledge that Polly was not altogether a cretin, I began a long, patient review of everything that I had taught her. Over and over again I cited instances, pointed out flaws, kept hammering away without let up. It was like digging a tunnel. At first, everything was work, sweat, and darkness. I had no idea when I would reach the light, or even if I would. But I persisted. I pounded and clawed and scraped, and finally I was rewarded. I saw a chink of light, and then the chink got bigger, and the sun came pouring in, and all was bright. 5 grueling nights this took, but it was worth it. I had made a logician out of Polly. I had taught her to think. My job was done. She was worthy of me at last. She was a fit wife for me, proper hostess for my many mansions, a suitable mother for my well-heeled children. It must not be thought that I was without love for this girl. Quite the contrary. Just as Pygmalion loved the perfect woman he had fashioned, so I loved mine. I decided to acquaint her with my feelings at our very next meeting. The time had come to change our relationship from academic to romantic. Polly, tonight we will not discuss fallacies.
Aw, gee.
My dear, we have now spent 5 evenings together. We've gotten along splendidly. It is clear that we are well matched.
Hasty generalization.
I beg your pardon?
Hasty generalization. How can you say that we are well matched on the basis of only 5 dates?
The dear child has learned her lessons well. My dear, 5 dates is plenty. After all, you don't have to eat a whole cake to know that it's good.
False analogy. I'm not cake. I'm a girl.
The dear child has learned her lessons perhaps too well. I decided to change tactics. Obviously, the best approach would be a simple, strong, direct declaration of love. I paused for a moment while my massive brain chose the proper words. Then I began. Polly, I love you. You are the whole world to me, and the moon and the stars, and the constellations of outer space. Please, my darling, say that you will go steady with me. For if you will not, life will be meaningless. I will languish. I will refuse my meals. I will wander the face of the earth, a shambling, hollow-eyed pulse. There, I thought. That ought to do it.
And misericordium.
I ground my teeth. I was not Pygmalion, I was Frankenstein, and my monster had me by the throat. Frantically, I fought back the tide of panic surging through me. At all costs, I had to keep cool. Well, Polly, you certainly have learned your fallacies.
You're darn right.
And who taught them to you, Polly?
You did.
That's right. So you do owe me something, don't you, my dear? After all, if I hadn't come along, you never would have learned about fallacies.
Hypothesis contrary to fact.
I dashed perspiration from my brow. Polly, you mustn't take all these things so literally. I mean, they're just classroom stuff. You know that the things you learn in school don't have anything to do with life.
Dicto simpliciter.
Will you or will you not go steady with me?
I will not.
Why not?
Because this afternoon I promised Petey Bellows that I'd go steady with him.
I reeled back, overcome with the infamy of it. After he promised, after he made a deal, after he shook my hand. That rat! You can't go with him, Polly. He's a liar. He's a cheat. He's a rat.
Poisoning the well, and stop shouting. I think shouting must be a fallacy too.
With an immense effort of will, I modulated my voice. All right. You're a logician. Let's look at this thing logically. How could you choose P over me? Look at me. A brilliant student, a tremendous intellectual, a man with an assured future. Look at P. A jitterbug, a knothead, a guy who'll never know where his next meal is coming from. Can you give me one logical reason why you should go steady with Petey Bellows?
I certainly can. He's got a raccoon coat.